French house is a style of house music originally produced by French artists, a popular strand of the late 1990s and 2000s European dance music scene and a form of Eurodisco. The genre has also been referred to as French touch, filter house, and tekfunk over the years. The defining characteristics of the sound are heavy reliance on filter and phaser effects both on and alongside samples from late 1970s and early 1980s American or European disco tracks, causing thicker harmonic foundations than the genre's descendants. Most tracks in this vein feature steady 4/4 beats with a tempo range of 110 to 130 beats per minute. Celebrated and successful purveyors of this music include Daft Punk, Cassius, the Supermen Lovers, Modjo, Etienne de Crécy, Kavinsky and Justice. History and influences. French house is greatly influenced by the lineage of American dance music from the emergence of disco onwards, maintaining a distinct connection to Eurodisco and the short-lived space disco music style. Space disco was very popular in France, with artists like Serron, Space and Sheila B. Devotion during the late 1970s and early 1980s. Additional influences come from P-Funk, especially the George Clinton and Bootsy Collins hits of that era. Due to originating from the same foreign market, P-Funk was played alongside disco in many French discotheques, especially after the disco demolition night took place in the United States. The jacking aspect of Chicago house was also picked up on as a theme to incorporate. Thomas Bangalter's tracks for his Roula copyright label may be considered the earliest examples of an attempt to establish a distinctive style of French house. His solo material, along with his work as a member of Daft Punk and Stardust, had a significant impact upon the French house scene during the mid to late 1990s. The French duo Motorbass were also among the first in France to produce house tracks which were largely based around samples and filtered loops, a Euro in turn inspired by emerging American house producers such as DJ Sneak, Green Velvet and Roger Sanchez, and their penchant for producing sample-led house tracks with deep funky grooves, a Euro, and released a sole full-length album, Pantsoul. Parisian producer Saint Germain produced house tracks with a similar style at the time, but these were more directly influenced by jazz as opposed to the brasher vocal disco records appropriated, while other known French DJ-turned-producers at the time such as Frena Section, Wak Vorkian and Laurent Garnier remain relatively distant from the emerging French house label. The first French house experiments were warmly received by the UK dance music press and European DJs in the mid-1990s, but major commercial success did not occur until 1997. Daft Punk, Cassius and, later, Stardust were the first internationally successful artists of the genre. Along with these acts were signed to Virgin Records and benefited from distinctive music videos directed by the likes of Spike Jonze, Michel Gondry and Alex and Martin. Due to a reasonable amount of buzz generated from the huge clubbing scene and major record company support, Daft Punk's debut album Homework entered the top 10 of the UK album charts on release, and they effectively became the biggest-selling French act in the UK since Jean-Michel Jarre. The emergence of the French sound was well-timed as dance music's popularity in the influential UK market was peaking commercially with general electronic music. Further international commercial success continued into 2000 with Bob Sinclair, Etienne de Crécy, Benjamin Diamond and Modjo achieving hit singles around Europe. In late 2005, pop superstar Madonna released Confessions on a Dance Floor, an album with significant French house influences in several of its songs. Terms, origins and variations. The term French house was first used in Paris in July 1987. Jean-Claude Legrazé, a photographer of Parisians' nights, created a couple of French touch parties at the Palace to make people discover house music. These parties were driven by DJ Laurent Garnier, Guillaume Latortue and David Guetta. This expression was printed, as part of a motto for French party-goers who liked house music, on a trendy jacket by a Permeric Morin for F Communications, in 1991. The motto was, "We give a French touch to house." British music journalists used the expression and contributed to the diffusion of this movement. The first time this term was used widespreadly by MTV UK during the Christmas holiday period of 1999. It was used on an MTV News special, to describe a so-called French house explosion phenomenon. Bob Sinclair was interviewed, as well as Air and Cassius. This news special later aired on all the MTV local variations worldwide, spreading the term and introducing the French house sound to the mainstream. Prior to that, French house had been referred to among Europeans as new disco, disco house, and new disco. However, the term French touch was first used by music journalist Martin James in his 1996 review of the first Super Discount EP in the now-defunct weekly music paper Melody Maker. This term became favoured among the French media and was then widely used in the UK press by 1998. Martin James was later recognised by French newspaper Libération and Radio NRJ as the journalist responsible for naming the French house phenomenon French touch. One of the biggest markets for new disco at the time was Greece, especially Athens. A local music shop called Disco Bell Records imported the records direct from France, and middle-class clubs like City Groove dedicated totally to the genre between 1998 and 2001. In Greece, this music style was promoted as disco house. At the same time, disco house began to gain success in Canada. During 1999 many events also took place on Spain's Ibiza island, a very popular destination for British tourists. French house is essentially a combination of three production styles. One is what the French still refer as the French touch, and it is the style that greatly influenced by the space disco sound. The second is a continuation and update of Euro disco and greatly influenced by the productions of Alec Acostandinos. The third would be the deep American house style, as evident in the similar treatment of samples and repetitive funky hooks. Naturally, further variations and mutations followed. French house maintains the established French touch sound, focused more on Euro disco-like vocals and less emphasis on the space disco themes. However, most of the music's most successful acts have altered their sound since. Bob Sinclair's later work, including the hit single World, Hold On, which had a video based on a science fiction theme, maintains only a distant connection to the original French house sound. Both Daft Punk and Etienne de Crécy subsequently developed a harder synthetic sound more directly inspired by techno, electro and pop. In Ibiza, disco house took later another direction. It combined vocals and some elements from the UK's speed garage with a local Latin flavour. By 2007, many underground disco house productions belong to the Ibiza school. Artists associated with the style. Record labels associated with the style. References